All right. Hi, I'm Caitlin, and this is Book Chats. Today's Top 5 Wednesday is Top 5 Series Endings. I realized compiling this list, there's a lot of series that I haven't finished, some of which I do intend to finish and some of which I do not. So if you don't see a series on this list and it wasn't in my worst series endings, it's possible I haven't finished it yet. Or it's possible that I was just meh about it, or, there's a series that I really love, but the second book is my favorite, so I didn't feel comfortable saying the ending was my favorite ending, because it wasn't really my favorite ending. Like, I appreciate the ending, but anyway, so these specifically are series where I enjoyed the trajectory all the way through, and I especially loved the third book. This is a little bit of a controversial list as well, probably because there is a book that you'll hit about midway that you will see, and it's a book that a lot of people hate, like really genuinely hate. Like, I have a friend who hates this book so much that when we talk about this series, we do not acknowledge that this book exists, the ending of this series, but I actually really enjoyed it, and so hopefully I can explain when I get there why I enjoyed it and what I liked about it. Spoiler, as my sister said, for this list, basically the answer is probably because someone was broken. I appear to really enjoy series where people get broken a little bit and then are like picking themselves up from that, or just have like very serious emotional consequences to what happens. So I am clearly a cold-hearted, terrible person. I'm gonna start now with book number 5, which I don't have with me, so I'll just put it up. It's The Bitter Kingdom by Ray Carson. It's the third and final book in the Girl of Fire and Thorns trilogy. I really enjoy this trilogy as a whole. The first book I really love. I love the way that Ray talks about faith. The series as a whole, I love the trajectory of the main character, Elissa. I really love how she changes and grows over time in the series. And in the third, it just went some places I was very much not expecting, but that I really thought were great places to go with the series. So The Bitter Kingdom I really enjoyed, and I think it was a great conclusion to this trilogy. And if you haven't read the Girl of Fire and Thorns trilogy yet, I would highly recommend it, for real. Alright, so book number 4 is one I do have here. It's the one I finished just because I thought it would probably be on this list. It is United We Spy by Ali Carter. I really enjoy this series because it's always amazing to me how much the series changes over time and scope. It is starts out as this incredibly light-hearted, fluffy spy story, which sounds a little weird, but it's basically a finishing school for girls who are actually spies, but not a finishing school because it's in the modern day, it's a boarding school for girls who are actually spies. And the first book is, sorry, I was sitting kind of funny, the main character, Cammy, wants to date a normal boy, and she doesn't know how, because she doesn't know how to deal with boys, and so she and her friends decide to spy to figure out how to date boys. And it's a really fun and funny book. It's very lighthearted. I really enjoyed it. And then as the series progresses, the stakes get higher, things come in, and suddenly the reality of being a spy and being at a spy school and what that really means and the dangers that can be associated with that are there. And so the characters really grow as people, and the stakes really get high, and the series really changes and grows. And this is a great conclusion, United We Spy, and it really stays in that vein. There's some very serious things happening. I always say in the first book in this series, Cammy, the main character, just wants a boyfriend, and in the final book in this series, Cammy just wants to be alive. So that just is an example to you of how it changes over time. And heads up, there is still some fluffiness in the fact that, like, none of the spying is really realistic. There's definitely, like, magical technology and all of the things that people sometimes have complaints about in, like, spy stories. But I really enjoyed it, and if you enjoy the first book in the series, I think you'll definitely enjoy the progression. I just always have difficulty after I read, like, the final book, recommending the first one to people, because I know that it starts in a very different place. I just know going in, the beginning of the series is very fluffy and lighthearted, but it definitely gets more serious as time goes on. So here is probably the book that will surprise people the most, or not people who don't know me, I guess. People who do know me know that I enjoy this book. I really loved, it's book number 3, I really loved Mockingjay by Suzanne Collins. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a great conclusion to this trilogy. The problem I think a lot of people have that I see very frequently is people will read The Hunger Games and be like, I love this, it's great, it has such great action and adventure, and it's very interesting and very, and they're not interested in, like, the politics of the society, and they're not interested in the politics behind it, and so they get to Mockingjay and it's all really politics, and they're like, what is this? And so they're like, they don't like the politics. But when I love politics, I love political intrigue in books, and so when I read The Hunger Games, I was like, okay, that was great. So you have to know that when I read The Hunger Games, in, I believe, January of 2008. So I read these books as they were being published. So I finished The Hunger Games, and I looked for the next book, and I was like, why is it not out yet? What is happening? But the thing is, I read The Hunger Games, and I was like, that was great. Now I'm ready for the political intrigue. Show me all the politics that we're going to go from here in the society, because the action is over. Now it's the politics. And then I got to Catching Fire, and they went back to the arena, and I was like, what is happening? Where are the politics? And so when I got to Mockingjay is what I expected Catching Fire to be. And so I really wanted and expected there to be this a political aspect of everything, so I just ate this book up. I just loved it, and I think there are some really valid criticisms that people have about the way that Katniss kind of blacks out a lot and has to have things explained to her, and I just saw a very good argument about one of the deaths that I don't necessarily agree with that person, but I now understand where they're coming from. But I, personally, love this book. I love the direction it goes in. I love the way that Katniss is clearly very broken and very much suffering from PTSD. I love the way that people heal each other. I love the final pairing because I was always on that train, but I also love that it's a very quiet romance. I think a lot of people felt like it came out of nowhere. It wasn't very well developed, but to me, I felt like it was in the background and seeping through each of these pages and all the way through the trilogy that it had been developing. And so I actually really love this book, and I understand that some people were expecting it to be more like The Hunger Games and less political, and they were disappointed, but for me, this is exactly what I wanted from this book. So yeah, I loved Mockingjay. So this book will be significantly less controversial, and it's a little bit of a cheat because technically it's a series because it's been published that way and we read it as a series, but it's really one book and one story, so I don't know if it really should be on this list, but of course it's The Return of the King by J.R.R. Tolkien. I have a really interesting history with the Lord of the Rings series. I really was obsessed with it in middle and high school, but I really had to drag myself through the Fellowship. It was very difficult to read. I don't think I would have actually read it if it hadn't been for me wanting to read it before the movies came out, and I actually did try to read it earlier in my life and wasn't able to because I was like, oh. But I sort of dragged myself through Fellowship. Two Towers was a much faster read for me, and then in The Return of the King was just like that in comparison, and I really love it. And I specifically also really love, in the vein of I really apparently like books where people are broken at the end, they cut the Scouring of the Shire from the movie, and I a little bit understand why they did it, but it was a little upsetting to me because I really like the Scouring of the Shire because I believe that it shows that you can save the world, but there's still evil in it. So the big evil is not the only evil that we have to defeat. And so then my final book number 1 is my favorite. This is actually my favorite book of this series, and so that's why it's number 1, because these others I really enjoy. I think they're great conclusions to the series. Some of them are or are not my favorite book of the series, but this one definitely, absolutely was my favorite book of the series. I don't own it, actually, but I do own the first book in the series. I'm going to show you the first book and then I'm going to talk about it. So the series is the Goose Girl Quartet by Shannon Hale, and my favorite is the final book, Forestborn. I really enjoy, this is a little bit loosely connected series. It's all in the same world and has kind of similar things, but the main character is different in each book. And in this series, the first book is a retelling of the Goose Girl, but the others are not, and Forestborn really connected with me. The main character really is someone who I really severely related to. Her struggle with what she's going through is very interesting, and I definitely love that book more than any of the others in the series, and I really like this series, so it's very much saying something. And I don't think there will be any other books in the series. I do think that was definitely the conclusion. There are some other series that it's ambiguous whether or not any more books will be written, and so I definitely left those off the list. But those are my top 5 series endings. Let me know below what your top 5 series endings are, and if anyone else out there really liked Mockingjay, please let me know so we can be buddies in Mockingjay love together. I know that I am in the minority here in loving that. I am so excited for the final movie. I think there's some very interesting things they've been doing with the films. Alright, I'm gonna cut it off now because my phone is giving me the death stare at each of these clips, and it'll be so weird to assemble them. But yeah, those are my top 5 favorite series endings. Bye! This week's Top 5 Wednesday is Top 5 Books that Feature Traveling.